All right, let's talk about one of the most tragic stories in all of sports history: the rise, the fall, and the flat out disappearance of the Seattle Supersonics. This is a story about so much more than basketball. It's about iconic players, a championship, and a really, really messy breakup between a team and the city that absolutely adored it. And that's really the question at the heart of all this, isn't it? This wasn't just a business transaction. This was a 41-year love affair. How does something like that just end? How does a whole city lose a piece of its identity? That's what we're going to unpack.
You have to understand, for over 40 years, this logo was Seattle. The Sonics were the city's first big league sports team, so they were woven right into the fabric of the community, right from the very beginning, back in 1967.
And they weren't just some team either. They were winners. We're talking an NBA championship, 3 conference titles, 6 division titles. This was a franchise with a really deep and successful history. So to really get what was lost, you gotta see where it all started.
Okay, so first up, let's look at how the Sonics became Seattle's team, a franchise that was literally born from the city's biggest industry and ambitions. So Seattle gets the team in 1966, and they start playing the next year. And the name, SuperSonics, well, that was a direct shout out to Boeing, which had just won the contract to build a supersonic transport jet. The team was literally named after Seattle's high-flying future. And from those high-flying beginnings, the Sonics pretty quickly grew into a legit powerhouse that would go on to define a whole era of basketball. After an amazing run in the late 70s, they won the whole thing in 1979, the team came back with a vengeance in the 90s as a totally dominant force. They made it to the conference finals in 93, and then, in 1996, they put together the best season they ever had. Yep, 64 wins. The 1995-96 Sonics were an absolute juggernaut. They were led by 2 of the most electric, must-see players of that entire generation, Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp.
Man, if you watched basketball in the 90s, you remember this duo. You had Gary Payton, the glove, with his smothering defense, and then you had Shawn Kemp, the Rain Man, with his absolutely explosive dunks. They were incredible, and they took the Sonics all the way to the NBA Finals against Michael Jordan's historic Chicago Bulls team. But you know how these stories sometimes go. Right at the peak of their popularity, the foundation starts to crack. And, as it so often does, it all started with a change right at the very top. So in 2001, Starbucks founder and Seattle local Howard Schultz buys the team. His goal was to get public money for a new arena. When that didn't happen, he sold the franchise to an ownership group from out of town led by an Oklahoma City businessman named Clay Bennett. And that sale, that was the beginning of the end. The price tag was $350 million. Now, Schultz said he sold the team with the belief that Bennett's group would make a real good faith effort to keep the team right there in Seattle. That's not exactly how things played out. Because that sale kicked off an intense 2-year battle for the very soul of the franchise. It was the city versus its new owners, and it got ugly fast. Bennett's group comes in and asks for public funds for a new $500 million arena. And when the state and the city said no, the owners immediately filed the paperwork to relocate the team. The fight was officially on. And then, during all the legal drama that followed, this just incredible quote came out. In an email, co-owner Aubrey McClendon said, "We didn't buy the team to keep it in Seattle. We hoped to come here." For every fan in Seattle, that was the smoking gun. It confirmed their absolute worst fear. The plan was to move the team all along. You'd think maybe the league would step in to help, right? Nope. The NBA's Board of Governors voted overwhelmingly, I'm talking 28-2, to approve the relocation. That was it. The city's fate was sealed. So, with their backs against the wall, the city of Seattle accepted a $45 million settlement just to let the team out of its lease 2 years early. That was the price tag for losing their team. An extra $30 million was promised if Seattle didn't get a new team within 5 years. Man, that final home game, it was just heartbreaking. The entire game, the crowd chanted, "Save our Sonics," just this one final, desperate plea as 41 years of history came to a painful end. But the story doesn't totally end there. In a really unique twist, Seattle actually managed to save its history even though it lost its team. Check this out. The settlement had this fascinating, super important detail. Seattle got to keep everything but the players. The names, SuperSonics, the logos, the green and gold colors, even the 1979 championship trophy, it all stayed behind in Seattle. A whole legacy just waiting for a new team to claim it. The years after were just filled with these painful near misses. There was a huge attempt to buy and move the Sacramento Kings that the NBA blocked. There were whispers about buying the Bucks or the Hawks that went nowhere. But then, a huge hurdle was finally cleared when the city decided to fix the problem that started this whole mess: the arena. The old Key Arena has been totally rebuilt into the state-of-the-art billion-dollar Climate Pledge Arena. It's a world-class building, it's home to the NHL's Seattle Kraken, and most importantly, it is 100% ready to host an NBA team. The biggest obstacle for the Sonics' return? It's gone.
And that brings us to today. The city's got a brand new arena. It's got a passionate fan base that never left, and it's got a legendary history just sitting in boxes. The NBA is talking openly about expanding around 2026. So the only question left is, after all this time, will the green and gold finally come home?